Hey guys, it's Marta. Welcome to March Garden. As you can see, for the way that I'm dressed, it's really warm. It's 12 to 14 degrees Celsius today. I decided to come to the garden and I wanted to meet with you and talk about all of the gardening jobs I'm planning for March. This is the most intense month in my garden and I will walk you step by step of what I do this month. When I walk into my garden at the beginning of spring, the first thing I wish to do is pruning. I really love that job and I always start with that. Today we'll talk about the plants that I start pruning first and then we'll go to those you can really wait with pruning and prune them later. But if the weather is fine, I really like to do most of my pruning in the month of March. So let's go to the front of the garden and let's talk about the plants I pruned. First, you've seen that on the video, but let's talk about it again. So this front border is mainly hydrangeas, panicle hydrangeas and Annabelle hydrangeas. So at the type of hydrangeas you prune early in the season. I also have few roses, peonies and boxwood. So this is the border that I come to first because I really like to see the impact of my work. So I prune everything and then I mulch it. So this is a space I always see as finished, and when you're beginning to clean your garden, you can see the vast amount of work that will need to be done. So sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I really like to start with tiny patches that I can finish. Then my brain sees it as a finished product and is happy with the result. You get a dopamine hit and then you can go to another part of the garden and another one. When I was younger, I used to get out of the house after winter. I would look at my garden and I would be like, no way I will be able to do it. So this is a thing, I call it the squares method that I developed for myself. So it is easier for me to work efficiently and not be overwhelmed by the amount of work to be done. The exact pruning method I've been using for my Annabelles and for panicle hydrangeas, you can see them in the videos that we posted previously. I show you with young plants or the older plants. I'm talking about different types of pruning and the methods. I've tested them all. Different moments of pruning, different heights of pruning, and I'm telling you what results I got with those. So I really hope you will see those videos. I also got a lot of questions if you're supposed to prune a really young plant, the one that you planted last year. Definitely yes. If you're pruning young plants, you are encouraging them to bush out. They will be more dense, so that's definitely recommended. And also some people asked if you should protect them because there will be still freezing temperatures. And with Annabelles and with panicle hydrangeas, these are very resilient plants, so it's not a problem to prune them, and then some of the frosts will come even until May in our country. So I always prune them in February. But I also tried pruning them in autumn, also in January, and this January I've pruned some of my panicles and I've pruned some of my Annabelles, and then we got a really cold week with -10 to -14 degrees Celsius, so that's really cold. And I checked those pruned stems. That was like 2 to 3 weeks after I've pruned them, and no damage. So you can see how resilient those plants are. But there is one hydrangea you should be very careful with, and that is the mophead hydrangea. Let's go and I will talk about that next. So this is a garden hydrangea, mophead hydrangea, that is called Otaxa. And this kind of hydrangea blooms on old wood, so last year's stems. If we pruned them or if the stems were damaged by frost, we would not get flowers. The plant will live. It will have beautiful, almost like squeaky green leaves, but we will get no flowers. So we really need to save those stems and sometimes protect them from the frost to have the flowers. So this kind of hydrangeas, a little hint, this type of mophead hydrangea is not a typical one. It blooms on old wood and also new wood, so it is a really nice variety, but most of them are not like her. But with these types of hydrangeas, when we prune them, and you can even do that in May, we only remove the flowers. You can like snip them off or you can prune them, but we don't go down. But if we want to shape our shrub, that is what we can do. We can prune in May, just shearing some of the stems, but have in mind that that stems might not bloom. What I did this spring, I cleaned all of the dead stems. They were definitely whiter. I could not see those beautiful buds, so I've pruned some of them and I removed the flowers. Now I will protect my mophead hydrangea from freezing temperatures. It was not covered during the winter and it survived really well, but now when we get this beautiful warm weather, all of those buds will start to swollen and then they will turn into leaves. If we get a frost, then it is very likely that those leaves will be damaged. So when we know that we'll get a frost, like a snap of frost, then I will cover it with horticultural fleece and it will probably survive definitely better. I know that it will work, and then we will be expecting beautiful flowers. Those old stems will bloom first, and with this type of hydrangea, we'll also get the new flash of leaves coming from the base, and then we'll also get the second flash of flowers from new growth. So Otaxa, you can write this variety. It is a beautiful one, pink with beautiful mophead flowers. So let's look around as we are standing next to my hydrangea. Let's look what I've done already. I've pruned my fruit trees, so my espalier apple tree and the standard apple tree. I've also pruned the ligustrum hedge, all of those leafy hedges that you have now. The beginning of March is a perfect time to trim them. We do that 3 to 4 times a year, depending on how robust is its growth. And it's a beautiful, lush wall of green that gives a beautiful backdrop to all of my hydrangeas. Behind me there is this wooden panel and a beautiful pergola that I grow clematis, roses, all of the vines on. And last night yesterday I was pruning it all on the ladder. Probably you can still see the ladder. That was a lot of pruning. I will be showing you how I prune my clematis. I think we also have a video on the channel that you can watch, because there are a lot of different clematis that you trim differently. Some you cut almost to the ground, some you cut like 30-40 centimeters from the ground, some 1 meter high, and some you don't prune at all. So you really need to know what type of clematis you have. If you don't, it's always the safest to prune it at 1 meter height if you're not sure, and then observe when your clematis blooms. If it blooms really early in the season, you probably don't cut it at all. So like May in our country is like Atragena or Montana, those you don't prune at all. Then when you have an early flowering clematis, that's probably a clematis that you prune pretty high like 1 meter or 1.5 meters. And then when you have a clematis that blooms later in the season, you probably prune it really, really hard, so like 30-40 centimeters from the base. March is a wonderful moment to mulch your borders. When you clean everything, you clean all of those dead leaves from your perennials, you prune all your plants, then you can mulch the borders. Because I have so many borders to mulch, and I've been mulching with compost for 10 years, that takes a lot of time. Why compost, you would say, not like bark. We do use bark in one of our borders, but compost gave my garden in those 10 years such a boost. When you dig a hole for a plant, you've probably seen it in one of our videos, our soil is like deep, rich, like almost black. And it wasn't like that when we moved here. Those 10 years of adding compost consistently gave that great water retention, that great color, that biodiversity, all of those worms. Like, it's really a beautiful way to mulch your garden. Normally, when I fertilize my borders, I would do that later in March when the soil is warmer. But because I want the fertilizer below the compost layer, I use the slow release fertilizer so it stays there for a longer time. If I use like a fast release fertilizer, if it's wet, the probably the fertilizer will go below the roots of the plants and they will not get the nutrients they need. So slow release for me, because I want all of the jobs to be efficient and I can do all of them one after the other. Michael asked me, but why? I was like, it's just aesthetics. I really like this dark layer of compost and I don't want to see the fertilizer granules on top of it. So that's how I do it. But general rule, fertilizing is better when the soil is warm. So like end of March, even beginning of April. And if you're like me and you like this black layer of compost, it's good to keep the fertilizer below. But slow release will be better if you're doing it now. I got a few questions about my roses and why are they pruned in the beginning of March. So let's talk about that. When I started gardening here in Poland, all of the books said that in Poland you prune your roses when forsythias bloom. That is in Poland almost in the middle of April sometimes. And then I was watching all the English gardeners that were pruning their roses in winter. I know that our countries are different, but in last few years our winters were very similar. So, as I am a very impatient gardener, a few years ago I started pruning some of my roses early in the season, sometimes even February and March, and I've never had any bad experiences with that. So I stayed with this method. But as I always say, there are different ways of doing things, because people sometimes get really angry when I show that on my videos, that this is not the way to prune. And I always say that this is my way of pruning and it works for me. And I always acknowledge that your method is also good. It's nothing bad. And both of our roses bloom. So I always say, don't follow any advice blindfolded. Try something, see if it works for you, as those rose prunings worked for me. Before we go to another part of the garden, let's look at this plant. This is a buddleia, a beautiful plant, butterfly bush, as you might know it. And the question is, how to prune your buddleia? A lot of people say trim it really, really hard, but it really depends on what you want to get with your pruning. With buddleia, if you prune it really low, and I do that every year, you will get the flowers just at this level. So if you like, this is what I like to do. I just go and I put my face into this beautiful honey scent of those flowers. And this is when we prune it really low. But if you have your buddleia at the end of the border, you have a lot of other plants that are different heights in front of it, and you want your buddleia to be really tall, then you don't prune it much. If you prune it this height, then you would get flowers like at 2.5 meters. A few weeks ago we were in London and we were traveling by train for a moment, and you can see hundreds of buddleias next to the tracks. And I'm sure nobody trims them, and you could see so many dried flowers there, but they were taller plants. But I think those buddleias don't really care what the internet says about buddleia pruning, and they bloom. And I remember once going on that train during the summer and I could see all of those beautiful blooms. So I think some of the buddleias can take care of themselves. So I'm thinking, what else am I pruning? So ornamental grasses, that video you will see very soon. But I prune almost all of my ornamental grasses, but I would withhold with my pruners for stipa and for pampas grass, because those are really vulnerable when the frost comes. So those are the ones that I prune last, and I even try to do it in April. Then the other plant that I prune latest is my lavender hedge, because it also can react not that well if the harder frost comes, and the frost in Poland, in the place where I live, can come until the 15th of May. So we have to be careful. And then with the trimming, all of the tuyas, all of the yew, we are pruning them and we are cleaning them inside. If you have any evergreens, it's always good to go inside of those plants and take out all of those ruddy old parts of plants, old leaves, because then the plant will be able to breathe better and it will be definitely healthier. That is a lot of work, that is a lot of dust, but it's so worth doing. What about the lawn? When is the best time to scarify your lawn, to all of those heavy works on it? So my test is the test of my hand. I always try to do this. It's also good for our health. We can, take something like, if I stay like here for some time and my hand is wet, and it is, in the middle of the day, I know that this lawn is still a bit too wet to do all of those jobs. So I really try to have it dry, and then I know I can do all of that, because when it's wet and you will start all those scarifying jobs, you will get it will get muddy, it will not look good. So a dry day and a dry lawn after the winter is the best way to go. Then we fertilize, we cut all of our edges to our lawn, we fertilize that, as I said, and we like take all of the gunk from the lawn. Okay guys, I will try to write in the description of this video all of the plants in the order that I pruned them first to last. And then let's go to my little greenhouse and let's talk about sowing your seeds. My sweet peas sprouted beautifully. I showed you that in a video, how I sow them. Whenever they are at this stage, I take them out of the house and I bring them to this greenhouse, because this is a perfect space for them to develop beautiful roots. We can even see one, see it reached already the bottom. So I know that not much will be happening here, but a lot will be happening below the surface. As pruning is my priority, I always go and prune as much as I can, and then I get into sowing. Probably I should do both, but I'm like one thing kind of girl. So after I've pruned all of my garden, I will be starting my annuals. I will be starting them in the house, or sometimes I start them on heating mats here in the greenhouse, because heating mats are very nice way to give some warmth to the bottom of your pots, and then they sprout quite well. Yeah, so that will be next week. I will also be sharing all of my annual sowings with you. These are my forced ranunculus. I forced them in a tray, and now it's time to give each their own pot. As you can see, forcing them in a tray is a wonderful way to do it, because you have beautiful root system and it really prevents rot. I really like this way of forcing them. So each one will get its own pot with a very fertile soil. All I need to do is have them here in the greenhouse. If we have any cold snaps, I will just have to be mindful that they don't get destroyed by the frost. Okay guys, let me know, what are your jobs in March? What do you like doing? What do you dislike doing? Is it like total madness, or do you have some kind of framework that you work in to stay sane? Let me know how your March looks like in your country. What are the jobs that you do first? What are the jobs that you do last? For me, it's like pruning, fertilizing, mulching, but I don't want to forget about the flowers. First, I will sow them, but I will also go and buy some of the pansies. I will put them in the pots where I have my tulip bulbs. I will water everything, and will be awaiting a lot of beautiful blooms very, very soon. If you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, hit that bell button so you get all of the notifications about our videos, and we'll see you in the next one. We'll definitely be working hard to have our garden ready for this year.